So I've met Orlando Sanchez, and Rob has trained, and you know Orlando Sanchez pretty well. Those of you probably have seen that video where Sean Strickland and Orlando are training grappling, and then controversy happens, and it's all over social media for like 2 weeks at least, right? And
yeah,
we're late to the
making
game.
the rounds.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that they didn't know each other. It wasn't like he was training him in preparation for a fight or anything like that. These two people literally just sort of crossed paths at the Ruka gym
I see.
in Orange County. So
that is interesting to know.
yeah.
And I think that's a context that you would have to kind of get to know because, when I rolled very briefly with Orlando, he was so nice, right? He was so nice, and he just, he could tell that I was just very, very novice, so he was just putting me in a position, seeing how I would do. So, and he never went full force or anything. So that's my experience with Orlando. He was a very cool dude.
Yeah, no, Orlando's great. He's a very complex human being. Just incredibly empathetic to people. Like he's been to some like really he doesn't hide this at all. He's been to some really dark places. So he's like always looking out for people who are going through whether it be drug abuse or depression or whatever it may be. So he's always looking out for people. So he's very kind in that sense, but he's also incredibly durable. So it's one of those things where he's a total badass, but also he's incredibly sensitive.
I see. So, Rob, I'm not that familiar with that position. What was that crank or whatever that was getting them to the point where it almost came to blows?
Yeah, so that's typically used just as a way to keep somebody in check, to make sure that they aren't going for underhooks on you.
Okay.
When it's done on the ground, if you have somebody in guard, it's usually called like a mirror lock.
A mirror lock.
Because like Frank Mir pulled that off in the real early days of the UFC. Basically, you're torquing directly under the elbow joint and then just lifting it up. So their wrist is basically stuck underneath your armpit.
Because I'm going for an underhook here.
So you lace it directly under the elbow here, and then gable grip.
Wow, I already feel it.
And then you yank this towards the ceiling. And so Frank Mir actually got a sub that in that way.
Wow.
Now, obviously, they were standing up. And the way it was performed was, you can see Orlando when he does it, he doesn't crank it to the ceiling. Like he very easily could have cranked it to the ceiling, but what he did is he just went like that.
Yeah.
He just gave it a little boop. And what he was doing was basically saying like, hey, like, because he had already attempted to prevent him from going underneath the armpit earlier. So I think this was like his second or third sort of go around in this. And basically what he was saying was like, hey, like, be careful, like, don't put your hand there because it's gonna get snatched. And even if you don't go for a submission there, it's very easy to, once you have somebody in that sort of prone position, it's very easy to take them down, and because they're so concerned about their joint that you can just sort of like take a takedown from there.
That's interesting. So what I'm learning from Rob right now, and I'll probably load up the footage for everyone to see, but what I'm learning from Rob is that even though it looked like Orlando Sanchez really used a lot of force, what we're kind of learning is he wasn't really using force to really break. It was quick, right?
Dude, Orlando's like, he's either over 300 or he's close to 300 pounds. So like you can see that like he only goes about, I would say, like maybe 45 to 50 degrees.
Yeah.
And he brings it back. He retracts it immediately.
Yeah.
So he's definitely it's like a testing the waters thing.
I see.
I love that. I love that he's just like, wah!
Yeah.
Good reaction speed from Orlando there. So yeah, this is the third time he places his hand underneath there, and you can see that he actually doesn't even go to the elbow joint.
Yeah, I saw that.
So he just goes to the forearm. Had Orlando gone all the way and like put his wrist directly underneath Strickland's elbow, all the ligaments in Strickland's elbow could have been completely ripped. And I think Orlando actually says this later on, like as Strickland is complaining about it. He says something like, if I wanted to break your arm, I would have broken your arm in half. But it's interesting because so Strickland here, he grabs his forearm, which means that he's actually concerned more about a bone break than he is the hyperextension of the elbow joint.
Yeah.
You can see that like he probably does have some hyperextension of the elbow, but he's grabbing low, like in between his wrist and his elbow joint. He's not even looking at his actual elbow joint.
That's so interesting.
So that means that obviously Orlando gave a little bit of resistance, enough to scare him.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this reaction is a total like scared reaction.
Yeah.
And I think he actually admitted it. I think he actually Orlando mentioned on a flow grappling clip that Strickland messaged him and says like, sorry for my reaction. And really what it is just it's being caught in something and being scared to the point where you just have a automatic response.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And then once you have that automatic response, you know, you can see that once his adrenaline wears off, he begins to talk to Orlando.
Yeah.
Like right about here, right about here.
Yeah.
He can see that his adrenaline is starting to wear off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I think what I learned from Rob is because to most of us who haven't really been in this position much, we see Orlando's kind of, you know, his twitch, and then we think it's like Orlando completely cranking it, but Orlando's giving him a little reminder without actually going all the way.
It's a real dangerous position. I mean, a lot of people, if you're going to go for deep underhooks, you got to go for deep underhooks quickly to get the body lock, because if you just sort of rest there, what's going to happen is you're going to get, if you don't get cranked, if you don't get mirror locked, you're going to get double whizzers, then you're going to get launched. So this is one of the things that, like, obviously, when you train with somebody that you've never trained with before, it would probably be beneficial. This is what happened, like, when I started training with some of these higher level guys that are far superior to me in grappling in terms of wrestling. You know, it's like, hey, like, I'm happy to like give you some resistance and I'm happy to train with you, but like, don't toss me on my head. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm, you know, like I'm willing to like, you know, give you some play and some resistance, but just don't dump me on my head.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just my way of saying, like, you know, I'm not a professional fighter, you know, and you guys have trained, you know, thousands and thousands of hours as a professional fighter. So, you know, if that you can just extend that courtesy to me, don't dump me on my noggin.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
And I think that's a good lesson, too, from what Rob was just explaining. If you're training with people who you know are at higher level, just tell them, look, it's my level, and also continuously give them feedback. So if they start going hard immediately, be like, hey, dude, don't assume they're going to notice they're going too hard if you don't say anything.
And typically when I'm training with somebody who's just like starting out, and if there's a discrepancy there, then what I'll typically do is I will gauge out like the intensity which they're sort of applying, and then just sort of match it or a little bit less. You know who's really phenomenal at this was Gustavo Gasperin. That guy, no matter how intense, you could have like let's say a blue belt like wrestler, collegiate wrestler, would just try to be going all ham on Gustavo, and he was just cool as a cucumber, and would find a way to just nullify everything. It's pretty impressive. I mean, I'm nowhere near what Gustavo's capable of doing, but it's something that I sort of aspire to, aim to, you know.
Wow. So, guys, if you want us to potentially interview Orlando, let us know too. And
get Orlando on the channel. Oh man,
I did reach out to him.
He's a fantastic guy.
I reached out to him, so let's see.
He's a character.
Yeah. So maybe we'll reach out to Orlando.
He's a wrecking ball. Orlando should be called the Wrecking Ball.
Definitely. And if you guys haven't seen those videos I shot at Orlando's place, check those out too.
You know what was so crazy about the comment section? I'll just say this real quick before we leave. Sorry for interrupting.
The
comment section was just full of misinformed people, and what it showed you is that there's a real difference between the sort of casual fan or like somebody who's like plugged into what I would like to call like the UFC sort of stream, the UFC propaganda, versus like the people who are sort of aware of all the different fighter landscapes. Because, you know, obviously Orlando's a undefeated mixed martial arts fighter. You know, so the title was very misleading. It was like, you know, obviously, Orlando's a jiu-jitsu champion, but he's more than that as well. He's also a mixed martial arts undefeated fighter. So it was kind of it really set the comment section up for a war zone, because it was like, oh, this is a mixed martial artist going up against a jiu-jitsu
guy. Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because, like Rob said, Orlando's had MMA matches. So it's unfair to be like, oh, it's a jiu-jitsu guy trying to flex. It's almost like that's how the title was implied with some of these other labels and other videos that were trending on Instagram and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I'm glad things got cleared up. It seems like things have gotten a little bit more cleared up since then.
Yeah.
Because Orlando was able to sort of clear the air on Flow Grappling. But wow, people, if you're just new to the sport and you're getting all of your info from UFC, make sure that you go outside of the UFC to see who's out there and who's training these people to become champions.
Yeah. Yeah. After all, the UFC has its own rules, its own biases, its own agenda, right? So just remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this was great. Thank you guys so much for watching. Jerry and Rob, by the way, this is Rob's coffee. And you guys know you guys can order his coffee.
That's right.
It's delicious.
That's right. That's right. So, this is Fight Commentary Breakdowns and Jaybird Coffee and Rob. All right, bye-bye.
Peace.